was all about China and Malaysia, who won 4 out of 5 titles at the season opener. Next stop, the Korean Open, with the richest prize purse on the circuit and plenty of world ranking points. This is the BWF Super Series. Welcome to our BWF Highlights show for 2011, coming from Seoul, Korea, the location of the second Super Series event of the year and one of the newly introduced Super Series premier events for this season. There will only be another 4 to join this one, played at various points during the year, with the other host nations being England, Indonesia, Denmark and China. Being a premier event, it offers more prize money in addition to those all-important world ranking points that will automatically select the top players at the end of the year to play in the Super Series finals. The Korean Open is actually the biggest of all the premier tournaments this year, boasting a whopping $1.2 million, which means close to $95,000 will be heading to each of the winners from the 5 categories of men's and women's singles, doubles and mixed doubles if you're left standing on final Sunday. As expected, a full list of players were in attendance to fight for those 5 titles on offer, and it was a glittering guest list, including last year's winners Lee Chong-wei and Wang, both looking to make it 2 consecutive Super Series wins, Yihan and Yang defending champs in the mixed doubles, and home favorites Jung and Lee Yong-dae, who were out for back-to-back men's doubles titles at the Olympic Stadium. But could they stop that Chinese charge from the recently completed Malaysia Open that saw China's Guo Zhengdong and Chai Biao storm their way to top honors? Let's find out. The home favorites came through to meet Malaysia's QING and Tan Boon Hyung in the last 4, where they were joined by another Korean pair, Hyun Ko and Seong Yu, who almost fell to Min Fang and Mu Lee. The last spot came from an all-Danish quarterfinal won by the 2009 winners MATHIAS and Carsten Morgensen. And they provided the highlight of the semi-finals, facing Sung Hyun Ko and Yong Seong-yu, who also had the entire stadium rooting for them. Still, the deafening atmosphere didn't affect the Danes, who kept their focus and the advantage in their straight games win, 21-17, 21-19. They would face another Korean pair in the final, the defending champions Lee Yong-dae and Jung Jae-sung, who were pushed to 3 games by Malaysia's top pairing, Koo-ken Kiat and Tan Boon Hyung. It was a glorious occasion for a country into market. The home favorites began the match by throwing some souvenirs to the adoring crowd and their fans, a sign of their confidence, which they translated effortlessly onto the court, much to the delight of the crowd. The only way to describe the first game was one-way traffic, as the Koreans, looking totally fired up, started like a runaway train, taking the first 5 points before the Danes got on board and clawed back the next 2. However, Jae-sung Yong-dae then won 6 straight points to go into the half-game interval 11-2 ahead after just 6 minutes, and in truth, never looked like relinquishing their lead from that point. They needed only another 7 minutes to wrap up the game as they won 21-6 in a surprisingly lopsided affair. The second game was a much closer affair, with the Danish pair much more aggressive from the start. They took the lead for the first time at 2-1 and continued to lead until 8-5 when the local favourites, with Yongdae's smashers finding their mark, drew level at 9-9 before taking the half-game interval 11-10 up. They continued to dominate and reeled off another 7 points to lead 18-10. It was a dominating performance by the Koreans, featuring great court coverage, precision play at speed, and power when they needed to force the advantage. As a result, the Danes only managed another 3 points before the South Koreans clinched their third Korea Open crown in just 33 minutes. When playing in front of such passionate fans, it's easy to get lost in the atmosphere, but the Korean pair had something else to smile about as well: the maximum world ranking points that could be obtained, and let's not forget the prize money. Jae-sung and Yongdae took home $94,800 US, while for the runner-up Danes, a prize of $45,600. It was sweet revenge for the South Koreans, who had lost the Super Series finals doubles gold to the Europeans earlier this year. So a great performance, capped at the end by yet more acknowledgement of the home fans that had supported them 150% over the 4 days of competition, which saw them rewarded with rackets and t-shirts thrown to their adoring fans after what can only be described as total destruction of the world number ones in the first World Super Series Premier Tournament of 2011. Still to come on our BWF Highlight Show, can any player or country break the iron grip of China in the women's doubles? The big guns were out to play in a battle royale for the title. That's coming your way in just a bit. Stick with us. This is the BWF Highlights Show 2011, and if you've just joined us, you're just in time for the women's doubles event, which hadn't seen a Korean pair as defending champions in the last wanted, and one that really didn't get off the ground. At the Malaysian Open, both semi-finals were taken up by Chinese pairs, and it was almost the case again in Korea, had the top-seeded pair of Chinese Taipei's Wen Xingchen and Chen Qin Yu not won their rubber set quarterfinal against Xu Cheng and Ma Jin. They broke the mold as the other spots were almost expectedly all Chinese: Wang Xiaoli and Yang, Chan Xing and Yunlei Zhao, and Du Jing and Pan Pan. Of both semi-finals, it was this one between Wang Xiaoli and Yang and Xing Chen that had the crowd entranced. It all looked comfortable for the Chinese pair, winning the first game 21-9, but a hard-fought 21-17 second game to the Taipei pair meant a rubber set, which Wang and Yu played to perfection for a spot in the final. When Chen Zhao won their semi against the high-seeded Du Pan, a repeat of the Malaysian Open final was created. In the eyes of the fans, the quality of the women's doubles in the past year has consistently improved, with some even comparing their play in terms of speed and power to how men play doubles. One of 3 all-Chinese finals and a repeat of the Malaysian Open final, Wang Xiaoli, Yang were a class above Chan Xing and Zhao Yunlei, who may have been struggling with fatigue and a case of split focus, as they were also in the mixed doubles finals, albeit with different partners. But with 2 such attacking-minded pairs on show, and with such a rich rivalry between them, whatever the circumstances, one thing assured is that all 4 players would give their all on final Sunday. In the opening game, as expected, both pairs showed excellent defensive and attacking skills. Both teams were intercepting the drives in the front of the court, with all 4 women, just as they did in the Malaysian Open final, trying to keep the shuttlecock as low as possible over the net. But knowing each other's games as well as both pairs do, they ebbed and flowed, trading shot for shot at times, always looking for that narrow angle or misplaced shot that could lead to a much-needed advantage. When the players took to the court again, a similar pattern quickly fell into place, but the 6 seeds of Wang and Yu gradually upped the tempo and started to take control just when it mattered the most. The combination of defensive court coverage and attacking flair let them put their nose in front once and for all, and they took the first game 21-18. So, Zhao and Chan, winners in Malaysia, of course, were now up against it in their quest for consecutive Super Series titles to kick off 2011. 1 game down, they started the second with renewed vigor, knowing that they needed to up their game. When they returned, the finalists produced the best badminton of the match, as Zhao and Chan simply refused to back down on every point. Of the 216 rallies that were counted in this second game, the finest would have been in the final points. Wang and Yu on all-out attack, they managed to smash their way to the front of the court, which usually means point 1. But on this day, Zhao and Chan did an amazing job to defend that killer front court smash to win the point and the all-important second game, forcing a deciding rubber set. In that deciding rubber set, the comeback that Zhao and Chan were wishing for was quickly snuffed out, as Wang and Yu raced to an 11-2 lead, which in women's doubles, where attacking is everything, is almost unassailable. Maybe the energy and exertion of those final smashes in the second game took their toll on Zhao and Chan, but they definitely seemed a little more labored. Wang and Yu saw their opportunity and played as a perfect team in the closing points, with each playing and covering their respective court with perfection and precision. Zhao and Chan would only manage another 2 points, losing the final game 21-4 and the title to Wang and Yu in a match that lasted just over 66 minutes. The spoils of war, which means the winning duo took home $94,800. So far, the richest check in badminton, a not entirely unexpected stat, as it is the first from the new World Superseries Premier Tournament, and part of the total prize of $1.2 million, which is also the most offered in badminton history. And from that record purse also came the $46,000 that the beaten finalists Chan Xing and Zhao Yunlei received. It was a wholly different experience for Wang Xiaoli, as in addition to her winner's check, it was the perfect end to a golden debut, as she had never previously played in the Korea Open before this tournament, unlike Yang, a third title for her in South Korea after winning the mixed doubles crown with Han Bin last year, and the women's doubles in 2008 when she was partnered by Jung. Don't go anywhere. Still to come on this BWF Highlights show, the mixed doubles draw, so Han Bin on track for consecutive and back-to-back titles in Korea. Stay right here to see if he beat the best and pulled it off. You're back on our BWF Highlights show for 2011, and we're at the mixed doubles camp, which to the home fans packed into the Olympic Stadium was all about revenge. They wanted a Korean pair back on top, as China stole the title in 2010 after back-to-back wins for the Korean pair of Lee Yong-dae and Lee Hyo-kung in 08 and 09. Han Bin and Yang were the defending champion Chinese pairing, and they took to the court together again. But this time, it didn't quite go to plan, as ironically they were beaten in the quarterfinals by Han Bin's Malaysia Open partner Ma Jin and her new teammate Chen Zhu. Zhang Nan and Yunlei Zhao, unlike Malaysia, made the semis this time, while the Danes of Pedersen and Fischer were ousted by the Koreans of Hyun Ko Eun Ha. The last semi-final spot was taken by Tao Jiaming and Chan Xing, making it their second consecutive semi-final appearance for 2011. The pair to watch in the semis were Zhang and Zhao, stung by their memories of Malaysia when they exited at the quarterfinal stage. This time, no mistake against the formidable partnership of Zhu and Ma. They were dominant in both the front and rear courts, and it ended up winning comfortably 21-14, 21-11. Awaiting them in an all-Chinese final would be Tao Jiaming and Chan Xing, who ended the run of the Korean pair of Ko and Ha, the 6 seeds winning in 2 games, 21-18, 21-17. But Zhang and Zhao would not be deterred, especially when playing like this. Some have called it the best match for years, and it has to be said, the mixed doubles final was a fast-paced spectacle with all 4 players on court giving their all to be crowned champions. Packed to the brim with smashes, great defenses and long rallies, which kept the audience enthralled throughout the 69 match. The opening game saw the teams exchange points, with neither winning more than 3 points at a time. Yunlei were trailing 16-15. The Super Series finals winners of 2010 then upped the tempo, with Zhang Nan in particular utilizing his powerful smashes to good effect as he and Zhao Yunlei reeled off 4 points in a row to take a 19-16 lead. Buoyant from their run of points, they only conceded just one more point before closing out the first game, 21-17. The second game followed the opening tie with the players evenly matched until Zhang Nan, Zhao Yunlei let a 5-4 lead slip to a 9-5 deficit. Six seeds Tao Jiaming and Chen Qing never looked back once they took the lead and turned the screws as the fifth seeds eased off in anticipation of a rubber game after falling from 12-9 to 16-9. Tao Jiaming and Chen Qing then won 5 of the next 9 points to force the first rubber game of the day. The decider was just as exciting with the match going down to the wire. Both pairs opening the game matched perfectly all the way to 6-6. Then a break at 13-11 as Zhang and Zhao went ahead 15-12. But even that break would be rippled back to 16-15 and then 17-17. So, after they started their season with a Malaysian Open worth forgetting, Zhang and Zhao make it deservedly to the top of the podium. The win was the pair's second win in 3 meetings against their compatriots, with all 3 matches coming in Super Series finals. Zhang and Zhao won their first encounter in last year's Japan Open, before Tao Jiaming and Shan Xing won at the China Open and the China Masters. After also finishing runners-up in Kuala Lumpur, you can understand the disappointment from the Chinese pair, as that makes it 3 seconds to Zhang and Zhao from 5 Super Series tournaments, including 2010. And a case of double heartache here in Seoul for Shan Xing, as she could have had 2 titles this Sunday, but ended up with nothing, as she also lost the women's final with Zhao Yunlei to Wang Xiaoli and Yang. On the way, the top 2 women in the world, Wang Xishan and Wang Yihan, pick up where they left off at the Korean Open. They would face each other as everyone wanted, but would it be in the final itself? Find out in just a bit. You're back on our BWF Highlights show, and it's time to check in with the women's singles tournament, which set the stage for another colossal battle between China's best ladies, notably Wang Xishan looking for 2 straight Super Series wins to kick off the year, and her close rival, former world number 1 Wang Yihan and world number 3 Wang Jin. As expected, all 3 made light work of the early rounds and sailed into the quarterfinals, which featured 5 different countries, unlike the season opener, which was all but dominated by China. And those countries were Japan, represented by Sayaka Sato, Tina Born of Germany, Porntip of Thailand, and to the delight of the home fans and Korea itself, Ji Hyun Sung kept her great run going, beating Wang Jin to bag the first semi spot. Yihan Xishan took the next 2, though Xishan did find some trouble against Tina Born. Porntip Burana Prasetsuk was the last semi-finalist, also needing a rubber set against Sayaka Sato. As you'd expect, after her amazing 2010, which saw her win the Super Series finals, followed up with an inaugural win in Malaysia, all eyes were on the 21-year-old Wang Xishan, who faced off against Thailand's Porntip, who was on a fantastic run that saw her beat Julianne Schenk in the round of 16, before her quarterfinal win over Japan's Sayako Sato. But here it was obvious that Porntip was facing something far more potent in the world number 1, who pushed her around the court with ease, taking just 28 minutes to craft a 2-game victory, 21-7, 21-13. Her opponent in the final would again be her nemesis Wang Yihan, runner-up in Malaysia, and who made it to the final by battling Korea's Sung Ji Hyun in a marathon 70-minute match. Not what she would have wanted when Xishan was in this form. As they entered the arena for their second meeting in just over a week, it was obvious that Wang Xishan and Wang Yihan, the top 2 players in the women's game, while still a clear cut above their opponents in Seoul, were simply not at their best, as this was their 14th and 15th matches of the month, respectively. Long rallies in the opening game affected the pace match, as the players were not as explosive as they normally are, while each also made more numerous unforced errors. Chasing her 3rd title of the year after winning in Taipei earlier this month and Kuala Lumpur last week, Wang Xishan only led twice in the opening game when she took the first point, and then 5 points in a row to lead 6-1. Wang Yihan then upped the tempo to take the next 7 points to lead 8-6. It was a lead she never relinquished, as she went from 10-10 to 15-11 before winning 6 of the next 9 points to win the opening game 21-14. The second game was much closer as the players traded points, with Wang Yihan leading all the way until Wang Xishan took 3 points in a row to lead 9-7. She went into the half-game interval 11-8 ahead, and although Wang Yihan drew level at 11-11, that was the signal for Wang Xishan to up her game, and she reeled off 3 quick points to make it 14-11. The world number 1 then continued to lead until 17-15, when the third seed found an extra gear to win the 6 of the next 7 points to clinch the match. Every sport has its rivalry, especially racket sports, and just like Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer in tennis, this rivalry between Wang Xishan and Wang Yihan is turning into something really special. Who knows how many final matches we will see between them both, but so far in 2011 it's been 2 consecutive, and the Super Series head-to-head for this year stands at 1 apiece. It was also sweet revenge for Wang Yihan, who had to also endure the loss of her world number 1 ranking to Xishan after she won in Kuala Lumpur. For Wang Xishan, her dream of winning 3 titles in a month was put out of reach after picking up the Super Series final crown in addition to her title in Malaysia. Though upping the ante in their own personal rivalry is probably worth more to her, Wang Yihan's 21-14, 21-18 victory in the first World Super Series Premier event also netted her $90,000 and closed the stats between the two, as she has now beaten Xishan 3 times in 5 meetings. Just around the corner on our BWF Highlights show, Lin Dan had everything to prove at the Korean Open, but it wasn't all plain sailing for the Chinese superstar. We check in with him and the rest in just a few moments. This is the BWF Highlights show for 2011 at the Korean Open from Seoul. With 4 titles down, we move to the men's singles, which this time included a fit and healthy Lin Dan after his withdrawal from the recently concluded Malaysian Open due to an abdominal injury. So a full-strength lineup, which as it always does, delivered more than enough action. And that action saw all the big guns make it safely through to the quarterfinals. Lee Chong-wei, Lin Dan, Taufik Hidayat, Simon Santoso and Peter Gade, who were joined by Japan's Kenichi Tago in his second straight quarterfinal and China's Du Pengyu and Zhengming Wang. Of them, Chong-wei, Lin Dan, Pengyu and Simon Santoso made it through to the next round, all in straight games, with the exception of Lin Dan, who needed a rubber set against Taufik Hidayat. While Lee Chong-wei entered his semi-final against Du Pengyu, knowing full well that a win there would create the final everyone was longing for in Malaysia, Lin Dan needed to put the rumors to rest about his form after withdrawing from his third Super Series quarterfinal in Malaysia. He was expecting an easy game against Indonesia's Simon Santoso, but didn't get one. A comfortable enough first game went to plan 21-13, but in the second game, he was humbled by Simon's power game on both courts and lost it, surprisingly, 8-21, forcing a rubber set. But renowned for pulling out his best play when it matters most, the Chinese superstar found a break in the third game, upped the ante, and went on to win it 21-15, giving him the match. It was only right that the first Super Series premier event of the year should also be the venue for the first meeting between the two best players in the men's game, though it must be said the occurrence of these meetings has decreased in recent times, with only 3 matches between the pair in 2010, with Chong-wei winning just one of them. For this one, Lin Dan started on his favorite side of the court, where the draft was to his back. And if anyone in the stadium thought that he might still be troubled by that abdominal injury he suffered in Malaysia, they quickly changed their opinion as the former world champion took control of a tight first game. As the opening game settled into a steady rhythm, the Olympic gold medalist managed to lead his arch-rival from the start, but there was nothing really separating them up to the half-game interval, where Lin Dan went in with an 11-9 lead. It was only when Chong-wei then won 3 consecutive points at 10-12 that he managed to take the lead for the first time, but it was short-lived, as Lin Dan roared back to go back into the lead, only for Chong-wei to get his nose in front for a second time at 15-14. It then became a seesaw battle for the advantage. Once again, Lin Dan came back to go in front at 17-15, but Chong-wei took the next 3 points to steal it back at 18-17. A solid break was needed, and it came as usual from the Chinese star, who upped the tempo, winning 4 of the next 5 points to maintain his amazing record of winning 93% of games when already ahead at the half-game interval. So, first blood to Lin Dan and halfway to the title, but an unfazed Chong-wei started the brighter of the two in the second game, forcing the tempo, which let him race from 1-1 to 5-1 and a significant lead. Keeping his consistency and focus, it became a lead he never looked like giving up, despite the best efforts of Lin Dan. As a result, Chong Wei went into the mid-game interval 11-6 up with some exquisite shot-making produced to create that lead, which had the spectators gasping in amazement. Once back on court, Lin Dan managed to reduce the deficit to 15-13, but that was the closest he came as Chong Wei closed out the second game 21-14. It was just the third time Lin Dan had dropped a game in this tournament, one each to Taufik Hidayat and Simon Santoso in the quarter and semi-finals respectively, with all three defeats coming when he was facing that notorious draft which had been noticed throughout the tournament. So the fans get a rubber set to watch as well, and just as the opening two games, the decider was incredibly tight, with the players never more than 2 points in front of each other at any point. Saying that though, Chong Wei held the upper hand and led all the way until 10-9, when a sudden injection of pace from Lin Dan saw him take the next 2 points to go into the mid-game interval 11-9 ahead. Using the break as momentum, Lin Dan then tried to force the pace after the changeover, but Chong Wei had none of it and showed some great defensive skills and recovery both in the front and back courts to not let Lin Dan pull away. The Malaysian world number one then used that good defensive work to try and assert himself more on the game with some delightful smashes which succeeded in catching his opponent off guard several times. However, Lin Dan had enough answers for whatever Chong Wei threw at him. He was not to be denied as he continued his dominance over Chong Wei by grounding out the rubber set to win 21-16 for his 15th victory over the Malaysian in 22 ranking tournaments. Dan, who has 3 world titles and 1 Olympic title to his name, entered the tournament with doubts surrounding his fitness after pulling out of the Malaysia Open Super Series quarterfinals with an abdominal injury. But he silenced the critics again, as he has on so many occasions in his glittering career. The Malaysian withdrawal was the 3rd time in 3 tournaments in the space of a month that saw him pull out. The other 2 times were in China and Hong Kong. For the world number 1, Lee Chong-wei, no 17th Super Series title, and just like Wang Qishan in the women's singles, he failed to make it a hat-trick of titles in January, and also like Qishan and her shadow Yihan, a part of him will be thinking of his growing rivalry with Super Dan and where it will take them next. As Lin Dan claimed his 13th Super Series title in Korea, it also meant that this Super Series event, just like the previous one, was, for all intents and purposes, again conquered by China, with another 4 out of 5 titles claimed by the country's shuttlers. Which is confirmed in the winner's roll of honor. Lin Dan making amends for his withdrawal in Malaysia with his first men's singles title for 2011. No second consecutive title for Wang Qishan as Wang Yihan wins her first of the year. Zhang and Zhao took the mixed doubles title after a quarterfinal exit in Malaysia. Wang Xiaoli and Yang bagged the women's doubles title, while back-to-back titles for Jung and Lee Yong kept the home fans very, very happy indeed. With the Korean Open done and dusted, that leaves 10 events left for 2011 before the Super Series finals that will be held at the end of the year. The All England, Singapore and Indonesian Super Series all return and are joined by a new venue for this season, the India Super Series, which is now part of the circuit as a replacement for the Swiss Open, for the first of 3 tournaments to be held in India all the way up to 2013. It takes its place before Singapore and Indonesia, which will be followed by China and Japan, before the circuit thrills European fans with the French and Danish Super Series. Hong Kong, on a return to China, will finish off the regular season before the world's undisputed best take each other on for those Super Series Masters finals. That's it from us, but remember to catch all the action that's on the way on your BWF Highlights Show 2011. For now,